Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, an island show that likes to roll up its sleeves and dig deep into the issues. I'm Robin Adair, and digging down with me is my co-host with the most, John Jurisic. And John, it's a really interesting week on so many levels. We're going to be talking a lot of politics on this show. We have the federal government. They're handing out all kinds of money for housing and youth, big cash, big announcements, because they're facing an election in another year, and boy, it's not moving the needle.
It sure isn't, Robin, and that has domino effects all over the place. Justin Trudeau came out west to talk about the billions of dollars for new housing over the next 5 years, but there seems to be wide discontent with the huge deficits this government has built up, and really general fatigue with people in power, and disbelief with people in power, I might add. This new Abacus poll tells the story. Conservative Party, way ahead, 37% of decided voters. I don't recall the Liberal Party being this low. They're at 19%. NDP is 15%. And then the rest of the groups, Bloc Québécois, 6%. Green Party, 4%. Quite a large undecided at 15%, though.
This is Pierre Poilievre's biggest lead at this point, and Abacus is matched by several other leading Canadian opinion polls that all show the Conservatives comfortably way ahead right across the country, and even in Quebec, very competitive. Speaking of other polling, Angus Reid have come out with numbers that show a 20% lead for the Conservatives, and if they were win today, they would pick up a vast majority of the seats across Canada, and the Liberals could be relegated to third or fourth place. But we want to put a qualifier on that. It's a long way until next year, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then. And also, this doesn't necessarily influence what's happening in British Columbia and our next provincial race, where David Eby and the NDP have a comfortable lead. And you can see that reflected in this poll by Research Co., the BC NDP, 45% of decided voters. Now, it's the big surprise here to many, BC Conservatives still handling second place very handily. 27% for the BC Conservatives. They came out of nowhere, and they look like they're on track to become the official opposition if these numbers hold. BC United still languishing at 15% support, with the Greens just behind them at 11%. Now, things could shift, but right now, it's just so fascinating to see how a political movement can benefit from a bigger political movement nationally. Pierre Poilievre gets his Axe the Tax message out. John Rustad and the BC Conservatives, they grab onto that. They grab onto key conservative messaging, even though they are a separate party. And it's also very interesting, the phenomena that we've already mentioned, the way that young people are shifting their loyalty to conservative politics. And we haven't seen that. I don't think we've seen it in our lifetime the same way we're seeing it now. A lot of young people turning out to rallies and public gatherings.
We haven't seen it in our lifetime. And you and I have been around the block a little bit. So you may well now ask, why are young people shifting their political posture? Well, for some perspective, we turned to Victoria podcaster and communications consultant Ryan Painter and asked him why he had walked away from the New Democrats and now considers himself a red Tory.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my mom over the weekend, and my mom, bless her heart, she has watched me in my own kind of NDP stalwartness over the last 20 some odd years. And she was surprised when I told her I was going to be supporting Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives this year. And I had a similar conversation with her, although it was a little bit shorter because she had to go walk the dog. But what I say to folks like that is, look, I was in the NDP. I was essentially someone who you would look at as an NDP insider. I was a executive member of the federal NDP. I was an executive member of the provincial NDP. I was someone who the NDP had go all over the country and run election campaigns. I joined the NDP in 2003, January, I think it was January 23rd or 27th, 2003. Jack Layton gave his his speech when he became leader of the NDP. And I just happened to be channel surfing and stumbled onto CPAC. Now, there's not many 18-year-olds who stop on CPAC and think, I'm going to watch what this guy's saying. But I did, Politico as I was, even at that age. And I listened and I thought, this guy is articulating a vision for Canada that really had me excited. It was a vision that was hopeful. It was a vision that was unified. And it was a vision that kind of saw the better angels of Canadians' nature really helping and supporting those who were living on the margins, those who were less fortunate. And I generally think all Canadians agree with that. We should be doing what we can to uplift and help people who, for no fault of their own, are in places where they can't get a leg up and have an opportunity to live a fulfilling life. Where I started to diverge was certainly with Jagmeet Singh federally. Now, again, I was a supporter of his. I didn't support his run for leadership. I actually worked for Nikki Ashton's federal campaign, who was more to the left than he was. But I started seeing him and his identity politics focus, which has never been something that I've been about. I was a union organizer. I've been in no fewer than 5 unions as a shop steward, as a regional representative. I really believe in a strong working class, in working class jobs, and supporting people to ensure that they and their families have the necessities of life, that they can have a strong, stable community, and all of this good stuff. And I started seeing some of the things that he was talking about, and it struck me as very divisive. It struck me as the opposite of what Jack Layton wrote in his final letter to Canadians. It was, my friends, love is better than anger, hope is better than fear, optimism is better than despair. And what I saw was instead the NDP specifically targeting identity politics to divide Canadians, to actually make us more angry, fearful, and disparate. Despair is all around right now when you look at how expensive things are. I'm just up the street from a gas station, $2.06 a liter. I don't know how anyone doesn't look at that and feel really angry.
You do a vodcast or a podcast as we do, and we're always interested to see what other people are doing. And the other group that are very interested in all of this, apparently, are our federal government, who've been making noises about clamping down on open discourse on social media and taking more control of what is being said out there in the worldwide web. What are your feelings about that, about the Ottawa denizens deciding to do something about free speech online?
It's a great question, Robin. I think, mainstream media has utterly failed. And people are no longer going to things like CBC or CTV to get their news and their information. They're going to alternative media sources because it's the real people talking about real things. When what happened, for example, on October 7th, which was a terrorist attack, Hamas attacking Israel, and when you have the president of CBC, Catherine Tate, being unwilling to call Hamas terrorists, being unwilling to say that it was a terrorist act, you have to wonder what the agenda is that's going on there. And look, I've been a supporter of CBC ever since I was a kid. I believe in a public broadcaster. But even I'm looking at that and I'm saying, maybe we need a rethink of public broadcasting. Maybe we need more alternative media, not less. We need more voices out there. We need more discourse out there. I want to just go back to one question you asked me earlier, Robin, which was why I support Pierre. And I support Pierre because I believe that he understands exactly what it is that Canadians want more of. And we want more ability to control what we're doing in our own lives. At the end of December 2023, he had an interview that he did. And he said in the interview, if I could start all over again and create a new political party from scratch, I would call it the Mind Your Own Damn Business Party. And because it's true, government is far too interested in what we are doing with our daily lives. I think Canadians generally want to be free from that. They want to go about their lives exactly how they desire to do it, however that may be as adults, live, grow, work, play, have leisure, do all that stuff without government determining how best to do that and what kind of news and information we're best to receive.
It's fascinating to see younger people gravitating to the Conservatives. I can't emphasize enough how I don't think that's ever happened in my lifetime. However, it's now happening, but everyone isn't buying it. For example, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, Mark Carney, has taken some swipes at the Tory message on lower taxes and smaller government. He says access tax is simplistic and could be damaging to Canada's economic future. Now, as it turns out, as you and I are yimmering and yammering about politics here and there, so are a whole bunch of other people on CBC, on all kinds of national broadcasts. Rumor has it that should Trudeau find himself walking in the snow again sometime in the fall, could be that Mark Carney's right behind him, walking to take his place. So it's quite interesting to see Mark surfacing on and commenting on all sorts of things political in Canada right now.
Starving the Beast was Pierre Poilievre's reflexive response to COVID. He saw a humanitarian catastrophe, and that's what it was, a catastrophe as another chance to slash spending and cut taxes. And remember that when he shouts, "Axe the tax," he's really whispering, "Can the plan," and leaving us with nothing. Demolition is not a plan.
So interesting to see Mark Carney in action. You wonder if he's got the gravitas and the personality to really turn the ship around. I could see, though, if Trudeau can't get the numbers back in his favor, why go in there and get slaughtered when you've been prime minister for such a long time? Wouldn't it be better to take a step back and give the Liberals a chance, at least, under some new leadership? And people are really upset about all this spending, all this public spending we've seen, and the deficits. And then on top of it, taxes. I mean, the carbon tax in itself, people really favor the idea of saving the environment. They're just tired of paying tax after tax after tax. And most people won't ever have to pay this new capital gains of 66% if you happen to reap a profit of $250,000. Most people aren't going to see that kind of money, but they still think they're taxing more. They're taxing more. They're even taxing people that are building wealth in this country. And it is off-putting. And it's got a lot of people in the investment field really, really upset.
Yeah, does it ever? There's certainly a feeling amongst many that we're at a taxing tipping point. One man who knows the Liberal Party inside and out is Dan McTeague, who was a Liberal MP for 16 years, back in the days of Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. Today, he also serves now as the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. We wanted to ask him about rising costs in fuel and everything else. And if this is the real reason that Justin Trudeau is suffering at the polls. Robin, shall we zoom him in?
Let's
you bet
do it.
We will. Let's do it.
Now, we're in the middle of national budgets. We're in the middle of all sorts of actions by the provincial and federal government. And here to talk about what's going on in our country and our policies around energy in particular is the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, Dan McTeague. And Dan, great to have you on the program.
Gents, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me once again. And I wish it was under better circumstances, but we continue to see decline across the country, and we need to talk about that, unpackage it, because we know that a lot of people will say it's external circumstances. No, it has a lot to do with your federal government policies and the wokesters at the provincial level who seem to be lining up behind them.
Okay. Gee, I haven't even asked my first question yet. All right. Well, so
right on.
we are talking, of course, about energy, and in BC, of course, they couple in energy discussion always with climate. Whatever the energy policy is always linked to climate. And if you don't agree with it, then you're somehow not in favor of cleaning the environment. And we have, of course, a political climate in the West that's very, very agitated right now. Every time they drive by a gas station and see the price and realize we are paying more for fuel out in Vancouver and Victoria than any other place in North America. It really gets people's danders up. And we're at the same time being told that this carbon tax is good for the environment, that we're doing this, it's all going back into environmental projects and programs, and it's all for our benefit, and that it's going to reduce carbon emissions. So give us the facts. Is this true? Is this what's really happening because of the carbon tax?
Well, if you believe that CO2 is somehow a pollutant, then I suggest maybe a refresher in grade 4 science, because it's not. Better yet, if you are concerned about CO2, then maybe you ought to take a trip to Beijing and ask them why they continue to emit to the extent that they have. It's not lost on us, even us here in Ontario, that when you see CO2 emissions going through the roof in British Columbia, a lot of it has to do with pollution, direct pollution, real pollution coming from places like China and India. And we could be the solution. We could be a solution to selling a lot more natural gas, selling our clean technology when it comes to oil. But no, we have dunderheads and a group of elites who are well paid by your taxes and mine, who are given millions of dollars in federal and provincial money to go around virtue signaling and push this very dishonest campaign of suggesting somehow Canada is at fault. Canada is a solution. Countries come to our door asking for our natural resources. Our country is 80% export dependent. And yet we have prime ministers and other characters, what I call the green left, environmental leftists, basically turning this country into what is, for many people, becoming an impossibility to manage to make it to make ends meet. It is seriously completely twisted from reality. And for that reason, I don't think we're just going to see your provincial government fall. You're going to see the federal government fall if there isn't a revolution before. And I sense that, especially in communities where so many people, hardworking people, now can't make ends meet.
But as for the actual numbers in terms of how much we're polluting, are we polluting less? Is the fact we're moving to electric vehicles, and the fact we're moving to hybrids, and the fact that we're ostensibly being told to drive a lot less because it's going to save the environment, is this working?
I reject the idea that CO2 is pollution. And I contend that those who are pushing this are both fundamentally dishonest and have an agenda. And the agenda is extremely anti-human. It's very antisocial to begin with. As far as whether Canada is getting its act together, yes, pollution is down. The real stuff, the NOx, the SOx, the volatile organic compounds. We've got a damn good track record on that, as does the world. But that's real pollution. And if you want to talk about that, that's great. I speak to environmentalists, friends of mine, who say, it seems that real environmentalism, so, biosphere, concerns about our water, the quality of our air, the quality of our land, the soil, those are things we are addressing, but they get knocked out. They do not get the chance to get the same kind of attention and money unless they're talking about CO2. And I will come back and say this again and again. CO2 is not a pollutant. And when you consider that much of the premise of their debate is based on a climate emergency, there's no bloody climate emergency. And it's fundamentally dishonest to suggest that. In the same way, the nomenclature, the words that they're using, like pollution and CO2, is also fundamentally dishonest. And so you have to really reconcile that with some of the people that are pushing these things. I suspect that the federal government and the provincial government are going to have a lot of time to think about science in grade 4 once they are defeated, and they should be. The sooner the better.
Okay, Dan, so great to have you back on the Rumble Room, wherever you are, at whatever time we can get you. Hey, listen, besides this, carbon tax, Ottawa has announced plans to ban gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Hey, is the electrification of literally everything the solution to global warming? And can Canada make a difference?
Well, yeah, we can make a difference, but China's going to come in with electric vehicles at a quarter of the cost of the current electric batteries that we're spending $65 billion on of money that we have to borrow. Look, technology is going to take us in a number of directions, but putting all our eggs in one basket, as the federal and provincial government has done, is ridiculous. And there are many concerns about EVs, not just in terms of how they're built, the amount of energy required, the damage and pollution, the real pollution in terms of the mining, and not to mention, of course, the standard of the little children who have to mine the stuff by hands in the Democratic Republic of Africa. Anybody who's virtue signaling on these issues really needs to think twice about it. But I take my tips on this from Elon Musk, who's already said that 10% of the Tesla's population is going to be cut over the next couple of hours.
So we're going to shift a little bit. We're going to move away from electric vehicles, but we're still in energy. And we've had national leaders coming to Ottawa, a number of people, Japan, Korea, Poland, Germany, all stepping forward. Greece coming to Ottawa saying, we'd like to purchase Canadian LNG. And they're being told, no, we don't have it available for you. Now, do you think that this can change? Is there still time that Canada could get in this game? Other countries are being very aggressive about moving towards an LNG future. We do have it up in our northwest. We do have LNG, but it's not being encouraged the way I would think it needs to be if we're going to be serious about it.
Well, what's it going to take in British Columbia? Another credit downgrade? You got one this week or last week. You don't sell resources to the rest of the world. You don't sell minerals. You don't sell oil. You don't sell gas. You don't sell forestry products. What are you going to sell? Because the last time I checked, the Canadian dollar is now trading at 139 pennies to buy a US dollar. That's contributing in no small way to the inflationary spiral. And it's also leaving the provincial government without any money. Look, this country, unforgiving climate nation, which has had, tremendous obstacles against its establishment, turned out to be one of the most prosperous in which to live, because we've harnessed our energy, because we've used our talents, our labor, and we've ensured that we instilled in everybody a modicum of affordability. We've allowed a handful of individuals, left-wing, green environmentalists, and they're only dealing with one issue, that's climate, to basically change the narrative, twist this country into a pretzel, and make of our future most uncertain and very tense. And I suspect that you and I can talk in 3 or 4 months. Watch what happens this summer as more and more people join the ranks of those who can't afford to make ends meet, as the CRA tries to tighten on the very people who've been hit hard by an inflationary spiral created by a federal government that can't get its provincial government that can't get the spending priorities right, and have basically taken the very things that could pay down our debt and create jobs in this country and toss them in the garbage pail. Those are the people who need to be shown the exit. The sooner the better. If not, gentlemen, I think we're talking a revolution in this country.
Always interesting to get the perspective of someone like Mr. McTeague, who was an MP, has been around the political game for a long time, knows the inside players, knows how the game is played, and yet has lots of insight into what's wrong with our system. So we'll certainly have him back on a show in the future. But for now, it's pretty well the end of the Rumble Room for another week. And there's lots of ways, though, that, John, people can follow the Rumble Room and join us from this point onward and be a regular viewer and a regular contributor, perhaps, with letters and comments for the Rumble Room.
We've had a ton of people watch us on a ton of our platforms. For those that haven't, which I think is maybe 3 or 4 in the world, do know that we create small clips from our larger shows. So we're in now the larger show format, of which, generally speaking, there will be clips throughout the week. So you must follow us. You must subscribe to us, and you must like us. And how do you do that? Well, on Facebook, lots of activity now on X. We're on YouTube, where everything is hosted. We are also have a podcast version of our show, so that while you're not able to watch, you can hear us. And of course, we're on Instagram and TikTok, which you never know what's going to happen on those platforms. So really appreciate, once again, can't emphasize enough that we're creating so much content. Think about liking us. That's it for another week. I'm sure you're a tad tired of me by now. However, I'm, as always, your humble servant, Johnny Jurisic.
And I'm Robin Adair. I'm rarely humble, but I always like to rumble. So, rumble on.
That was great.